Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. I am very excited today, as always, but today I'm extra excited and also a little bit embarrassed because I have been working with this brilliant woman for a while now. We have done a number of videos in English and in Urdu, and we plan to continue to do so. So yeah, I can't believe it's taken this long to actually have her here on Holy Humanist and be able to tell her story for the first time, entirely holistically on this channel for all of my English viewers. So yeah, without further ado, I'd like to invite a dear friend, Dr. Madiha. She runs her own YouTube channel as well, which we're going to talk about. But she's also a mother, a wife, a feminist, and a doctor. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Madiha Saeed to Holy Humanist. Hi, Dr. Madiha. Oh, Madiha, we can't hear you properly. Can you try that again?
Hi. For excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you, Madiha. I could kind of hear what you're saying. Okay, wait, can you try again? Maybe there's something wrong with the sound.
Okay. Take like 5 seconds before I talk so you can hear me better. Now
Yeah.
can you hear? I'm so sorry, everybody. I think it's my internet connection. I am not sure what's going on. So can you guys hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Now we can.
Thank you so much, Nurya, for inviting me to Holy Humanist. Very excited to be here, and I'm honored.
Oh, no, thank you. The honor is all mine. And like I said, I do apologize. It's taken this long for us to do this because, as you know, Dr. Madiha, this, especially Holy Humanist, was born out of a need and a kind of trying to make a safe space, I guess, for women to speak out and use this platform to tell their stories. And you have such an incredible story in your own right, and you've come so far beyond that that we don't really take time to look back and see where we've come from, and the struggle we've gone through, and the survival mechanisms that you employed at one point in time to get where you are today and to do what you're doing. So for the purposes of this interview, I just kind of want to mix things up a little bit, and I want to start from where we are now and today. So I'm going to share your channel with everybody. I implore you, please, if you are from the subcontinent and you understand Urdu or Hindi, even a little bit of it, then please subscribe to Madiha Talks. She's doing exceptional work. She's bringing on people from a wide range of fields to talk about some whether it's socio-political issues or socio-economic issues. And honestly, what I love the most is some of the taboo topics in Pakistan that are off limits, that are never kind of spoken out in the mainstream, are not talked about within households. So I love the kind of barriers that she's breaking with those frontiers. But yeah, Madiha, so if you can just tell us while I share your channel, what made you think, okay, you know what, I'm going to use my voice and I'm going to use the platform that is YouTube, and I'm going to try and educate people or help women and do what you do?
So it's a long journey. I have always been very vocal about a lot of issues wherever people face in Pakistan, and I used to be part of a couple of WhatsApp groups. One was from my med school class, and there were a couple other groups. And whenever there was any issues regarding women, regarding feminism, regarding religion, I used to have a different kind of opinion than the rest, like, way different than the popular narrative. And I used to find myself alone. Everybody would start bullying me in the group, and I would be left with, confused, like maybe something is wrong with me, maybe I am the one who has a problem. But my heart would say, no, but that is the right thing. So I kept on, raising my voice in platforms, and I used to get bullied, and I used to get like made fun of. Everybody would, gang up against me. So I kind of left some of the groups. And then I found one of my friends told me about Haris Sultan's channel. That was last year. And I contacted Haris on Instagram, and I love to write about issues. So I sent him what I've written about how women are not allowed to go to mosque, and how they are, supposed to enter through a back door, which is like a dirty entrance, not the main, and then they're supposed to hide, and they're tucked in the corner. And I just found it very discriminatory, but apparently no women finds it discriminatory. Nobody has an issue with it. So these things make me very uncomfortable and very frustrated, why women don't have issue with this. So I sent to Haris, and he said, that's really good. Who are you? What is your story? So do you mind telling your story on my channel? So I went on Haris's channel last year, but I didn't show my face. And then I was in contact with Haris. I used to send him different kind of things which I used to write. And then I said, I actually, I feel very lonely. I feel very marginalized being an atheist. So but I am a very vocal and opinionated person, but what should I do? He said, maybe you can start your channel. And then I thought about it, and and I started my channel with the social issues. I just wanted to talk about women's issues and whatever, society, as a Muslim society, the hypocrisy, a lot of issues that Islam, I didn't want to talk about Islam in the beginning. But as I started speaking up, making different videos, I would, you come to full circle, you come to Islam. Islam seems to be the biggest hurdle in each and every issue that people in Pakistan face, but nobody wants to talk about it. So that just kind of forced me to open up a little bit more as I, got more confidence. So that's how I started.
Okay, that's amazing. And I'm so glad you are here, Madiha, because it's a very lonely a niche, especially for women and women who are showing their face and coming out, exactly as they are, kind of all guns blazing. And we're in very much in a place of privilege. So for us to be able to do this and kind of, almost be like the foot soldiers, mad respect to you. And I'm so glad that you are this vocal, and you can't keep quiet. I literally love women like you who are outspoken, and that's why I had to put that quote in the thumbnail, that well-behaved women rarely change history, because I do think the battle that you're fighting is such an important one, and you're honestly fighting it alone, it feels at some point. So more power to you. And yeah, just before we move on, Ultra, thank you so much for your support. G Block, what's up? G Block supports atheism and apostasy, #humanism. Thank you, G Block, and thank you for also subscribing to Dr. Madiha's channel, Madiha Talks. So cheers, that is very much appreciated. You will not regret it, I assure you. Haram Doodles is in the house. Thank you so much for being here. And again, another powerhouse of a woman is Haram Doodles. If you have not checked out her extraordinary talent, then Instagram @Haram is the handle. And she basically tells stories of Islam through her artwork and through doodles, essentially. So they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. That's literally what her doodles do. We can sit here and talk, but she encapsulates all of this into a nice image that is very well thought out. Haram Doodles, I hope you're going to enjoy this conversation. Thank you. Thank you. I'd love to get you on at some point as well. Sorry, can you mute me? Can you mute the mic on yourself? Yourself, sorry. Yeah, because my voice is echoing. But yeah, Haram Doodles would love to absolutely get you on as well sometime, and maybe we can all do a collaboration. The more voices, the better. Okay, so yes, Soleil. Oh, Soleil, thank you for being here. I hope you're well. Yes, I know, sorry, the sound is a bit echoey from Madiha's side, but what we're going to do is when I speak, she'll try and mute herself, and then hopefully that should minimize the sound disturbance. So apologies for that, guys. Okay, so Dr. Madiha, let's basically get to, I guess, the whole juicy story that we've got to hear. And I mean, I guess it's a tale of survival and bouncing back. So take us right from the beginning. I want to kind of get an insight into, you know, who was Madiha as a child? What kind of home were you being brought up in? What kind of influence did your parents or any other role models have on you? So yeah, just give us a kind of background into your life growing up, if you can, please.
Sure, thank you. I'm so sorry about this. So I want to tell one thing before I start. I like read this meme, a couple of years ago. Before you start questioning yourself, make sure you're not surrounded by, assholes. So that was the case with me. Everybody was telling me that I was wrong. There was something wrong with me. I was crazy. I was literally called all sorts of names. But and I did have a lot of questions. I was questioning myself. I, had self-esteem issues. I was depressed. And then I found my, ex-Muslim community and a lot of atheists and free thinkers who think like me. And that made me realize I was surrounded by wrong people. So before you start questioning yourself, you have to make sure you're surrounded by right people that, empower you. So that's one thing. I'll start my childhood. My family, I was from Sunni Muslim background. My parents both were educated. My it was like moderate Muslim family. I never saw my father praying. My mother used to pray once in a while, but there was no, compulsion on us about, following religion. Like, you can, just like every parent will tell you, you go read namaz, but there was no force on wearing hijab or something like that. Basically, an educated middle class family without any religious restrictions. So, and my father was a feminist. He would support us. He taught me how to, bicycling and everything. There was no hurdles in going out or everything. I was, we were four brothers, two sisters. So I was, if you say, I was the most religious out of everybody. Not like I would pray, like not 5 times a day, but as much as I could. I think if you're a sensitive person, you get this religious teachings and all the horrors of ending up in hell, or you want to, you don't want to go to hell, so you try to do as much as you can, like follow the religion. So I think I was the most sensitive one. That's why I was following the religion. I also, when Ramzan comes, sit in itikaf, like you go in a separate room and don't talk to anybody in last 10 days of Ramzan. And you just, what you do is you pray and you read Quran and everything. So I did that at least twice in my life. And I got married and I moved to United States. So when I came to USA, I didn't have my, steps, USMLEs. So it was a very rough time of my life. I'm gonna skip that part. I'm gonna go to the part where I was. That was a another long journey, and I had a full interview about that. How I overcame my, struggle in America, and how I, built, made my life from scratch. Basically, I came with nothing, and I literally, I worked in gas stations, and I, um, collected money for my exams, and I was working, raising my kid, and I was studying for exams. So it was a very rough patch of my life. So my personal life was not going very well, and eventually I, ended up filing for divorce. So that was, fast forward around 2014 and 15. I had never heard the word atheist. I knew about the word murtad in Urdu, that because of in our books in Islamiyat in Pakistan, it says after Prophet died, a lot of people became murtads, and Umar killed them or Usman killed them, something like that. So I've heard about that word, but I didn't know about atheist. There is a thing called, atheism or something. So my friend came to America on her Fulbright scholarship, and one day she confided in me that she was an atheist. And I was like, what does that mean? She said, I don't believe in God. So just like every Muslim, my response was, may, in my head, I said, may Allah guide her in right direction. And oh my God, what am I hearing? And I started, I was because I'm a very, calm person, very rational. So I tried to, probe her, what was her rationale, why she doesn't believe in God. And she said there were so many scientific errors in Quran, it doesn't make any sense, and this and that. So I thought about it, and I went back, and I tried to, rebuttal with her. I would go back, find, what is Zakir Naik's videos, and I would rebuttal with her. And then I said, there is a thing, entropy, it's mentioned in Quran, and she would give me counter arguments, and they would make sense to me. So I was, going back and forth. So I had this discussion with her, and I, forgot about it. So during the same time, I was going through divorce, and I used to drive to work, 45 minutes drive. So I thought maybe, it was very low time in my life. I was like, you feel like you had hit the rock bottom or something. So I thought this is the right time to connect with God. So I decided to, learn Quran. All your life you get this guilt in you that you don't read Quran, you read everything, but you don't read Quran. So that guilt always, bothers every Muslim all their life. No matter what they do, they are always back of their mind that they have to read Quran. So I said, let's just connect with God. Also, there is this saying, if you want to talk to God, then read namaz in prayer, or if you want God to talk to you, you read Quran. So I decided to, listen to Quran in Urdu, so I understand it. So as I started listening to Quran during my drive to work, I would, first chapter, it's the repetition, every third verse about, God is going to burn you in hell, God will send you in heaven. Then after every third verse, it would just keep on repeating. Then there were stories, one story wouldn't end, the next one would start. And then it was jumping from one topic to another. So I kind of got to 3, 4 chapters, and I was like, what is this? What I was looking for in Quran was, some words of peace or some comfort from God. Like, I got you, I love you, I'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything, because that's what I was looking for from God. But instead of that, it seemed like God was obsessed with a small group of kafirs in a small part of the world. And God was constantly talking about them. How would he take revenge from them? What he would do to them? Why they're not listening to him? Why they don't believe in him? So that was the time when I was going through divorce, and I was like, I don't even think about my ex that much. Why God is so obsessed with small group of kafirs? Like, come on, you're God. You're like, you literally made this whole universe. So I was like, what is this? I got bored, and I found it bizarre. I found the whole, Quran and the God that we knew all our life, like God loves you, God is very kind, God is very loving. I didn't see any love or kindness in Quran. So it was very underwhelming. The God that I met in Quran was very underwhelming, that what I believed all my life. So I was like, I went back to my friend. I called her up, and I was like, so what were you saying? So then we started having these conversations again. So now I kind of really started thinking. And at the same time, it was like 2016, I was reading Sapiens. And if you had been to schools in Pakistan, they don't teach you anything before Islam. You don't know. I didn't know any history. I didn't know even there was history before Islam. There were civilizations. So Sapiens were like kind of an eye opener for me. And then I told my friend, I'm getting confused. She said, why don't you read God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens? So I opened that book, and it just blew my mind. Every word made sense, like all these stories and everything. So also, when I was reading Quran, so everybody, whoever becomes an ex-Muslim, there are, some deal breakers for everybody. Some people leave Quran because of the scientific errors. Some people leave Quran because of the, women's rights. There are no women's rights. Some people leave Quran because how it treats, non-Muslims. Some people leave Quran because, some people leave it because of the hadiths. They don't make sense. They're like literally comical. And, some people leave because of the hate speech. So there were three things which really bothered me. One was the...
Madiha, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you there because we're kind of moving and jumping from lots of parts of your story, and I want to just kind of build. Sorry, could you just mute yourself, Madiha? Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to kind of build, get an insight into your state of mind, kind of. So just to pause a little bit and go back to your childhood and the way that you obviously said, you, I guess, were fortunate enough to come from a family where, like you said, nothing was kind of shoved down your throat in terms of like religion or religiosity and what you need to do, especially because we know Islam demands so much, especially from a child of a young age, right? That's like, I think you're supposed to start praying at 7 and be hit for it if you don't by 10 or something to that effect. But do you think so? So when you are telling us now about how you were in America and these conversations back and forth with this friend of yours, and you're slowly kind of having your mind opened, were you, despite your parents being quite liberal, and also I love the way that your dad and your mom have raised you, so hats off to them. But were you basically like just a staunch believer in Islam and Allah because of your own faith, like despite that? So your entire, let's say, like adolescence to your adult life, when you were in America and you were having these conversations, just kind of where you're leading us up to now, was that just like Dr. Madiha fully believing in Islam from deep down the bottom of her heart? So were you like more of a nominal Muslim, like you thought, okay, this is all there, there's something that exists, he takes care of me, but I don't necessarily have to wear hijab, or if I miss one prayer here or there, it's not the end of the world? Where was your headspace as a Muslim?
So yeah, as a Muslim, I was like, I really loved God. I thought God was very kind. He's not gonna, like, these people who are forcing things, he's not like that. He's just gonna forgive everybody. That's what I believed God was. Very loving, very kind. He loves the children. He's not, I mean, women's rights have always bothered me, like why men get married 4 times. A lot of times I had told my mother, I'm gonna ask God when I die, like why he did that to women, or also why Prophet had so many wives, why women have to cover up and men don't. Like because I was raised by a father who was a feminist, and then we were two sisters, and then my brother was born. And before I was told in my childhood that when I was born, my mother was really looking forward for a baby boy. And at that time there were no ultrasounds, so you literally find out when the baby girl is born. So when I was born, one of my aunt told my father, who was coming, to the labor room, or like, he said, she said, there is a baby girl. So he said, okay, I'm gonna go get the mithai, sweets. She said, no, leave it, it's a girl. He said, so what does it matter? So it didn't matter to my father, but my mother was really upset when I was born. So I literally took it to my heart, and I was always competing with my brother who was born after me. So I was like I was like a tomboy when I was growing up. I was like competing with him. Why can't he go outside? Why can he play cricket and I can't? So things like that. In Pakistan, the society is conservative. Once the girl hits 12, she has to, go remain indoors. She can't just go out. So I would go out. I would play with his friends. They would get annoyed why the girl is, she's making us lose the match, but I would not, listen to anybody. So I was like that, like a tomboy. I was competing with boys because it really bothered me why girls are, like, I didn't understand what was happening, why our society was like that, but this injustice did bother me. So that's why I used to have these questions. But deep down inside, I always believed in God. Even when I was going through tough time, I, started praying more. Like, I even started praying tahajjud. You become more attached to God, that because He's gonna solve your problems, whatever you're facing. So when my friend told me, even I felt bad for her. Oh my God, she's gonna go to hell, and what would happen to her. But I didn't get angry. I didn't, I because I was very sincere to her, so I prayed for her. Hopefully she'll come back to Islam. But I didn't like fight with her or stop talking to her. A lot of people, they stop talking to you when they hear that you have become ex-Muslim. So there is a lot of hate that comes with the religion or religiosity. That was not with me. So she was, nothing changed between us except for I found it very interesting, her views. So it opened another window to explore. So I really try to hang on to religion. So I would go back to listen to Zakir Naik. Then he stopped making sense to me because you can bust his whatever he says very easily if you have a little bit of common sense. Then I clung to Gandhi. So I started listening to his lectures. So can I tell you now what bothered me in Quran specifically?
Yeah, sure. Just hold on. Just hold on for a little bit longer. I promise we'll come to that. And for the people who don't know who Ghamdi is, he is a Islamic scholar, a very famous one in Pakistan. So obviously Madiha was listening to Zakir Naik, and then a very, very famous scholar that quite a lot of people, I guess of this generation and the previous generation as well, find him respectable and like his positions on Islam. But yeah, so Madiha, you mentioned something, and again, for people who aren't aware, I think I always get this word wrong, ittikhaf, right? I think that's how you say it. Anyway, it is something that personally I never did as a Muslim. I was probably not that good of a Muslim to do that. I just thought, I'm not shutting myself away like this. But I wanted to ask you, Madiha, you said that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you did that twice. And most people do this, like Madiha said, in the last 10 days of Ramadan. They're considered the most holy of the entire month. So everything gets ramped up from the last 10 days onwards. And I think it's the last couple of odd nights. Any of those nights could be the night where the Quran was sent down. So one of those nights they stay up praying all night anyway. But various people, as Dr. Madiha did, go into this ittikhaf, and it's almost like you are separating yourself from the world completely, and worldly issues and problems and desires even. And it's like you're there, you're introspecting, you're connecting with the beloved. Well, Sufis say that, Sunnis wouldn't like that word, but you're connecting with Allah, essentially, and it's pure devotion. So for Muslims who really believe, it is a time of seriously enhanced spirituality and kind of like meditation, if you will. But yeah, Madiha, and I guess a similar thing in people go to India and go to ashrams and take like a vow of silence. I guess it could be compared to something like that. But yeah, Dr. Madiha, how was your experience as a Muslim doing that twice?
So you could either sit for 10 days, the whole 10 on 10 nights, end of the after 20th Ramzan, or you can you have to sit for odd number of nights, something like that. So one time I sat, I was in seclusion for 3 nights, and one time I was for 7 nights. When I was I secluded myself for 7 nights, I finished Quran twice. And because that's what all you do, you can't talk, you can't have cell phones, you can't have there's nothing there to do except for you eat, drink, fast, pray, and then read Quran. So that's all you do all day, so or all night. So that's what, when I was there for 3 nights, I finished Quran once. But all this time I was reading Quran in Arabic, so without any meanings. I didn't know what it meant. We all get brainwashed when we are children, and then we never think about it because everybody around us thinks the same way. So nobody's questioning faith, so we are all like in it together. So it all, so we never come to this questioning part. But I think, when I moved to America, then you see other people from who are non-Muslims, and you see they are also good people, so your stance becomes a little softened, how you think of Muslims compared to how you think of non-Muslims. So you think everybody is equal. So that's the first thing that comes to your mind, and that may help change some people their minds, but not everybody, because some people become more rigid. So that was my experience was, just like when you are in a believer mindset, then you feel like, you found God and you're so holy, and you're all your whatever, whoever you prayed for, all your prayers got accepted, something like that. It's literally what you believe. You have confirmation bias about it. So I felt great after, very holy spiritual person.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you did. I mean, I'm sure anyone would. Exactly. That's why I just wanted to, just get a snapshot into, for people who do believe in that moment, that is something profoundly like resonating. I think somebody in the comments mentioned Riet. Yeah, very accurately said it's a very insular experience. And as Dr. Madiha says, you come out feeling a lot more holy. In fact, sometimes even the holier than thou thing kicks in, because you've just been washed over by like Islamic divinity, connected with your God. You've got a secret connection with him that nobody else has. But yeah, no, thank you for sharing that with us, Madiha. But yeah, okay, let's move towards, as you were saying, you're in America. You've obviously had this conversation and interaction with this friend of yours, and she's making you question your own beliefs. And Zakir Naik is starting to make less and less sense to you. Ramdi Saab is starting to make less and less sense to you. Sapiens has opened your mind. Christopher Hitchens has opened your mind. And obviously the wheels are turning. So yeah, what was the kind of the knockout punches for you that made you really be like, okay, there's something seriously wrong now?
Right. So when you read, I think it's in Surah Baqarah, the story of Aisha, how she lost her necklace and the whole saga. She went back, and then this thing comes. So there was a whole verse about it, and I was like, what do we have to do with this story now? Like, how does this makes any sense for me now? What do I do with this information? It doesn't add anything to me or to any human on this planet, right? So I was trying, because I became very bored with the message, that there was nothing for me in it. It was all, looks like it was like circling around one person's life, what he went through. So and then so I was finding problems like here and there, like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense. And I was like questioning. At that time I was also talking to my friend, reading other books, so my mind was opening slightly. Then there was a verse about how Muslim men can marry their adopted sons' wives. That was so specific. I was like, why Muslim men can marry their adopted sons' wives? Like, how is that an existential crisis, and how does this help the humankind? Right? So and then there was a verse about if and I think it's a euphemism that's used in Arab world. If a Muslim man calls his wife his mother, or your behind is like my mother, then they either have to fast for 60 days, or they release like slaves, or they sacrifice camels or something. There's a verse like that. And I was like, oh my god, I mean, this is not a huge problem. You said your wife mother, you can just apologize to her. Why do you have to do all these things? So that these are none of this made sense. And of course there are these supernatural stories about fish eating the prophet, and virgin births and parting seas and all that. So everything was adding up. So when I came to these things, I went back to read, to listen to Hamidi. There was a lecture. I was like, there was a lecture of Hamidi. Is there any evidence of God? Because now I'm reading Christopher Hitcher and Four Horsemen and Richard Dawkins. So I was like, what does Hamidi say about the existence of God? So I listened to the whole lecture, And what he does is like he plays with words and he keeps like deceiving the question. He doesn't answer the question. Eventually, there's nothing, there's no answer. So I listened to it twice. I was like, did he answer the question? Is there any evidence of God? It turns out there was no evidence of God. It's all belief. And he's also saying, oh, you should stop questioning after some certain point and you shouldn't be dealing with this so much. If you're, same thing, how people start, shaming you for asking questions. And I was like, this is it. This doesn't make any sense. And I didn't snap out of religion. So I did my whole research, and then I went to read hadith and all that. So I read Quran 2 or 3 times. I wanted to make sure I'm making the right decision. So in 2018, I finally Ramzan came and I stopped praying and I stopped, fasting. So that was like I made my decision after thinking long and hard. And I made sure I made the right decision. And I was like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's interesting to see like what is the final straw for some people, because with every ex-Muslim out there, we've all got our kind of, the final straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. And these were issues that are not issues that you can gloss over, right? Like the verse in the Quran about God ordaining that Muhammad could literally marry his adopted son's wife. As you said, Madiha, like as if that is such an important prescription that most men are out there thinking, oh, sugar, am I able to marry my adopted son's wife if I fancy her? Like, that's not happening, like left, right, and center. Like you said, what kind of, in your final message, a timeless, eternal message to mankind, how are you helping the human race with that tiny piece of information? And as somebody said, other things to that effect, like the Quran verse about, people not overstaying their welcome at Muhammad's house after food was served, and from them talking to his wives from behind a curtain, and then nobody marrying his wives after he passes away. Like, hello, all the alarm bells should be ringing that, as Madiha says, a lot of this Quran is just tailored around Muhammad's personal life, like his daily dealings, his issues with his wives, like all centered around one man and localized to this one tiny region and this particular period in history and what was happening. And half of that, more than half of that, is not applicable. And then it's also interesting to hear, Madiha, how you started listening to the Quran in your car in Urdu, because obviously Urdu is your mother tongue and your first language. And as you said, like, for your whole life before that, what you naturally and intuitively would have thought is the most incredible message and the most perfect sublime thing, here you are now in your car listening to it in Urdu thinking, well, that doesn't sound very nice even, or logical, or why say that again and again? I heard you the first time, mate. You don't have to repeat it, like as you're saying. And then if you're going to start telling me a story directly, like this is God speaking to us in the Quran, if you're going to tell us a story, stop telling us you're going to burn the kafir and the non-believers every 2 minutes. Like, just pause on that. So yeah, it just, all of this anger, all of this resentment, all of this bitterness comes off the pages. As you said, you start thinking, nobody even thinks this much about their ex, or leaves like this is some weird kind of toxic relationship where, it's like, love me or I will burn you. And here I've got these tidbits of wisdom for you that aren't really wisdom when you look at it. And I can completely see why that would throw you off course. And I'm glad that, when you were seeing the other side of it and you were hearing the other arguments, that you were able to like follow your instinct and your logical mind to say, no, there is some merit to this, and I will actually follow up with that. Because a lot of people, especially a lot of women, I think, when they have to confront these harsh truths, they really pull back. And as you said, when you were going through your divorce, for example, those are times where you pull back and you get even more religious just to kind of overcompensate for the doubts that you're having. And the cognitive dissonance that's at play, right? Because we live a lot of years with cognitive dissonance. A tiny example of that is like when I lived in Saudi Arabia, and there were beheadings and stuff happening, and the only reason I was able to put that into, like, compartmentalize it in my mind was because I was told that's Wahhabi Islam. So I was like, okay, we're not like that. We're not like that. Sunnis don't do that. And, you know, you just think you find ways to make everything make sense. I've written essays defending why women should get less inheritance because men are the breadwinners and they go out and provide. Now, looking back, that makes me sick to my stomach that I was even trying to justify this. The concept of halala in Islam, where if you get divorced or your husband pronounces the word divorce 3 times, you need to marry another man before you can get back with him. That was one thing I could never rationalize, Dr. Madiha. However many people and women I asked, nobody ever gave me a good enough answer for that. But yeah, did you want to say something on this, and then we'll move forward?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things I missed in my story. So when I was, going through my divorce, I really wanted to go for Umrah, you know. So when I found out about Umrah, I couldn't. I had to have a male guardian with me. So that made me really angry. Why I was like living in America all by myself, making my living, supporting myself, and in order to see God I have to find a male guardian. So I was like, so doesn't God know that I don't have a man in my life? Isn't he the one who did all this to me? So I was like, it made me really angry, and I was like, I'm not taking. Somebody said, oh, you could take your son with you, and he was so young, and he was like just being he was my dependent, I was supporting him. So I was like, I can go to work and make money on my own, but in order to see God I have to latch onto some male guardian with me who I support, who is my dependent. So just being a male gender makes him superior to me. So that really made me angry, and I didn't go, and I'm so proud of it. I was like, even though I really needed God on my side, but I took this this stance on principle stance. So because I was angry, why do I need to do that? Especially I don't like to cover myself up. Why should I have to hide myself when God sees me everywhere? Why, in order to see him, I have to change and become somebody which I'm not? Why he can't just accept people? Why can't we just walk in, just like in the churches? People just can walk in the way they are. They don't have to change their attire or become something they're not. So these things, like, I was like questioning even before I was becoming an ex-Muslim. I was questioning all these things. So even though I was a Muslim and a true believer, I was never irrationally, believing everything blindly. Like, when I talk to my friends now and I tell them, in Islam, men can beat their wives. And there are women who are physicians who come and tell you why they deserve to be beaten up, and you look at them with wonder and surprise, like, are you kidding me? Are you like, what happened to all your education? When are you going to use it? When are you going to use your brain? So people become so irrational, even though they're educated, it does not matter. So I was not that kind of a believer. I'm so glad I was not. So that's one thing. So when we were growing up, so my mother was not very, rigid on all that, but all her friends, and in Pakistan, like, there are all types of people. So we used to get all these books, Islamic books, how women should stay indoors, how hijab is important. So one of the books that we got, me and my sister, it was Bahishti Zevar. I don't know if you have ever heard about it. If I say it's Halal Kama Sutra, I won't be wrong. So if you read it, it's that's how me and my sister, at the age of 12 or 13, we got introduced to sex and female body parts and male body parts, because the book explains it in great detail. That's the book where I found out how men can have sex with more than one wives in the same bed at the same time. That book literally says all that, and all the etiquettes of having sex, and what women do and what men do after sex, how to take shower. So that book, if you read Bahishti Zevar, I don't know who wrote it, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad or something. I don't know who wrote it, but no, Ashraf Thanvi, Maulana Ashraf Thanvi, and he was very, highly valued, or in Muslim, circles at that time when he was alive. That was, I think it's even before Pakistan was made. So so that was the eye opener book for us at that time, and we used to laugh about it and all that. We didn't take it seriously, but now I it's like how Islam is all about sex. And then there is a verse in Quran that I come across when I was reading Quran. The women are men's tilth for men, like औरत मर्द की खेती hai, and like women are like a piece of land or field for men, and they can enter wherever, however they want. So that also had sexual connotation, behind it. Like there was the story goes like this, and actually the explanation is worse than the verse itself. So I was that really bothered me. I was like, it doesn't say men are women's tilth. It just says women are men's tilth. So why it's not both ways? So when I read the details about it, so this is how it goes. When Muslims migrated from Mecca to Medina, they used to have sex in both, all the style, like doggy style and everything. And when Muslim men went to Medina, so the Nasara, Nazarites, they shared their wives with them. So they used to do missionary pose. So those women, they protested to prophet, like, we, what is this? So this is when this verse comes, that women are men's tilth for men, and they can enter however they want. And I found it so disgusting. And so like a lot of these small things which people who read Quran in Arabic, they don't understand, they don't go into detail. And somehow all their mullahs, whoever, nobody has time. When they grow up, they start busy doing jobs and everything, so nobody goes back and really starts reading Quran. And even if they read it, they read with the believer mindset. Nobody reads it with the skepticism. It doesn't cross anybody's mind that Muhammad wrote all this up. And because everything revolves around his own life, whatever he benefits he wanted, he would write it up. He wanted to marry his adopted son's wife, he wrote up this verse. So he wanted to free Aisha of the accusations of cheating, so he made up that verse. So he wanted people to leave his house early, so he made up that verse. So he would make up stuff as you go. It's not that hard to figure out. All you have to do is just read it with a rational mind.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you, Dr. Madiha, because I wanted to touch on that bit as well, because your story is like, that's just a massive, massive, pardon the pun, but like a middle finger up at a woman who is in her own right, like an adult with agency. And as you said, like, it's so strange to think that the all-knowing has set this requirement, and you were going through probably one of the hardest things in your life at that point, which means out of trying to deal with that, you're going to seek God and get closer to your faith, and he is the one that's standing in the way of that, just because of like how you were born and what you were born as. That's absolutely wild. So yeah, I think the fact that male guardianship was literally an obstacle to you going to do something that you thought you have just as much right to do as any other man out there, as you do, it is, I mean, that would hit very, very hard for a woman. And I know now, like, Saudi's trying to lax those laws as well, and they're trying to have women enter not need a mahram, like a guardian, to do that now. So things are changing even there, because I mean, it's going to raise eyebrows and questions. And the fact that, again, that was like a nudge in the right direction for you to step back and think, hang about, there is something seriously wrong with the fact that God, the all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent God, has set this kind of weird restriction, and at the moment it's being an impediment to my own life. So yeah, it's interesting that that was kind of like a push factor as well. And I think somebody, again, yeah, Haram Doodles, I wanted to read your comment as well. This is how Islamic patriarchy keeps us women tied down when we're indoctrinated to believe Allah blessed us with the role to please God and men. Exactly. And even the way that it's phrased in the Quran lends itself to that, when it says, men are the caretakers of women, or men are the guardians of women. And then it also says that we have made one gender or sex, basically, like we have made men excel over women because they are the protectors and maintainers of women. So you're already taking away agency, taking away equal opportunity, taking away all of those things from a woman, and saying, actually, hierarchically speaking, the man is above because of X, Y, and Z duty he performs. So you are doing nothing but rendering the woman's duty to a baby making machine. And then you're putting even more restrictions on her movements, who she can interact with, the way she can express herself, the way she can dress. All of those things just scream misogyny codified within Islam. And we haven't even touched on like the domestic violence that's sanctioned by the Quran yet. But Dr. Madiha, just before we move forward, 85, I know it's very late in Pakistan where you are right now, and I know you're trying to hang in there by a thread listening to us. So I hope this will get you woken up a little bit more. You had a question, and I think I'd like Dr. Madiha to answer this if she would kindly. Dr. Madiha, 85 is saying, what do you think makes the difference between a person that questions everything and the one that simply complies with their upbringing?
I think rationality, and it has got nothing to do with your education. Some people, even if they're uneducated, they'll be very rational, and you talk to them and you'll say they can sort out BS from facts. So this is, I think, maybe it's a mutation in your genes. Some people are equipped with rationality and some people are not. Majority people are, they have this believer mindset. They just can't follow. You give them guidelines, and you give them a set of rules, and they will just follow blindly. Majority people will be like that. That's why you see cults are formed, because people want the easy way out. There will be few people who will be called as a rebel, and they will question everything. If you see each and every era, there were some people which were outcast, like starting from Aristotle, then Galileo, and then uh, the Mendel, or even Darwin. So all these people were not the mainstream. They were not aligned with the mainstream thinking. They had their own independent thinking. So that is the difference. So majority people you will find their followers. But as this as what we are saying, the rational thinking becomes mainstream, you will see majority people will come to this side too, because they'll say, oh, so majority is following this, let's just follow this. So this is what people do, because your brain is an energy saving machine. It likes to save energy. It doesn't want to go through this hard and long process of thinking, sorting out stuff. It takes a lot of effort and energy. Just like, I spent 2 or 3 years of my life sorting this thing out, whatever, de-brainwashing myself from everything, separating the whole clutter of Islam. Literally, I was a very firm believer. My iman was very strong. But as I was finding out, more and more problems, I started sorting out stuff. So and it takes a long time. Majority of people, they don't want to do all that. And also the this binky of God, it's like a blanket. Little kids hold on to their blanket. It's very comforting idea. It's intoxicating that there will be somebody who will take care of all your problems. And you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is sit in a corner, pray to that person, pray to that supernatural being. He's watching over you. He's got you. So this is a very comforting concept. There are people who care more about the facts than this comfort. They would rather be uncomfortable and know the truth than being comfortable and lied on. So it also depends, it all what kind of personality you have. So it has nothing to do with education. I've seen like PhD scholars, doctors who had like done MBBS from Pakistan, then they had their MBs and FCPS and whatnot, all type of degrees in front of their name, but they cannot think rationally. And that's what it is.
Thank you so much for your answer, Dr. Madiha. Sorry, 85. Yeah, you're not in Pakistan. What was I thinking? But yeah, 85 said, loving Madiha's answer. So thank you, Madiha. And yeah, as you were saying, ex-Muslim Zafar Sahil Samir, I guess that's a plug, not your name. I was saying, I was a natural atheist since my early teens. My daughter is exactly the same, even an early age gene copy. I'm glad that your daughter is as much of a critical thinker as you. And yeah, I do think that, like, you know, even if there's one person who's able to think this way within a family unit, it definitely has some kind of a knock-on effect on the other members of that family. It has to, when you're living in such close quarters, and Islam or religion is such a big part of a interpersonal familial lifestyle, especially coming from a Pakistani background. Half of the times when you're getting invited to people's houses, it's either religiously related or, yeah, I guess more than social, it would be religiously related. And sometimes, you know, having one person that goes against the grain in the family, other siblings or children, or even nieces and nephews or parents or they question, they do take a moment. So I think even if there's to be like one ex-Muslim from within every Muslim household, even that will exponentially increase the amount of ex-Muslims there are, because I've heard stories of like brothers helping their younger siblings out of Islam, or just giving them those seeds of doubt that are necessary. Same thing with IW, another Pakistani ex-Muslim who Madiha and I have collaborated with. She's like helping her sisters kind of think in this critical way. And I think and again, when a woman does that, because obviously a woman has a lot more kind of interaction, and especially as a mother, you're in a position to really pass on these like most foundational elements of knowledge and thinking, basically effectively teaching your children how to think and not what to think. If there's a woman like Madiha who's now got the next generation thinking in this manner, then we can be sure that, you know, at least society as it progresses is not going to be held back by these very, very rigid gender roles and heavily misogynistic like narrative that many of our generations before have just been silently suffering through, and especially women and the women in our families and the women around us. I don't know of any woman in my family that said, nope, I'm taking a different route. I'm not going to have children. I'm not going to get married. Or, you know, I'm going to live life how I want. I'm going to dress how I want. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to see and be friends with who I want. They have all had to make so many sacrifices, and we have considered that normal up until this point, where I think this is why I love speaking out with Dr. Madiha on YouTube, is because I'm learning as we go. Like, I've just realized I'm a woman that's shed religion. So I've shed those mental shackles. And now I'm also liberated. I'm liberated emotionally. I'm liberated sexually. I'm liberated in a way where there's not impending doom or hell lurking over my, hanging over my head or lurking over my shoulder. So I now have life to experience with a whole different set of mental, cognitive, like an outlook and decisions that I can make. And it's weird to think that you would go and be voluntarily entrapped into some of the ways that our women have just thought life was normal and the very basic thing they had to do. So yeah, I just think one woman out there like Dr. Madiha is just a game changer that would have a domino effect. And speaking of ex-Muslim women, there's another one here. Sahara is in the house. Thank you so much for being here, Sahara. Sahara is saying, hey, Nurya, and brave guest who said no to Muhammad, no to Momo, and no to hijab and Islam. Good to see another person freeing themselves from Islam. Exactly. Even us as women, our voices are gaining momentum. And obviously, I'm glad you know of Haram Doodles. So yeah, this is turning into more and more of the channel that I want it to be, people. So thank you so much. But yeah, Madiha, back to you. Sorry, yeah, I'll just read a few of these comments, then we'll get back to you. Exactly, Sahara. It's sad that the brainwashing and indoctrination is so deep and the fear is real of questioning Islam, and not to mention dissenting from Islam. Exactly. And Haram Doodles is saying, my journey started as a kid with questioning why dinosaurs weren't in the Quran, but getting shut down by my mom telling me not to ask questions made me even more curious. And that's it, haram doodles. You know, that's what we should be doing when you're told not to question, or how dare you, or getting a shitty answer in response. That's when you keep going. It was exactly the same thing for me. I think we had this discussion on a Twitter space. It was hilarious. But I told you the answer they gave me for dinosaurs was that Allah was testing out his creation, and the dinosaurs weren't good enough for the test. It wasn't enough of a test. So then Allah eventually decided, let me start again, wipe them out, clean slate. Let's try humans this time, but still let's keep these animals that exist with us today. Then you can ask them about extinct animals and why God made them extinct. They just don't have the answers. They're like not operating in those leagues. But yeah, Madiha, I could sense you wanted to come in on this dinosaur thing. Please go ahead.
Dinosaur, they're microbes, they're not even mentioned in Quran. So instead of repeating stuff over and over again, God could have, touched upon these topics, but he decided not to. The other thing I would like to mention about the religious trauma syndrome, that, all of us, indoctrinated into the religion, and we don't realize how bad it is for our psyche. So from my early childhood, like, all my mom's friends were very religious. My mother was not that. She never, forced us to do anything. But all the books that I was getting from as a gift for me and my sister, because I was very naughty, as a girl, when I was growing up. So, so everybody, when a girl is very, outspoken and very lively or bubbly, everybody tries to calm her down. So I was getting a lot of these instructions and books, so to, mellow down, become a good Muslim girl. So a lot of things that were told us: whenever a Muslim woman goes outside without covering her head, angel curse upon her, and then she will be burned in hell. And then, because of her hair, there will be more women in hell, because they don't cover up, they show their beauty to men, and they, go outside in the shops, in the markets, wearing perfumes. So everything you do, you start, like, even though when I was little girl, I would get scared when I would go out. I was not covering my head, but in back of my mind, I was like, oh, so there are angels cursing at me. I would visualize angels standing there and cursing me, and, like, saying what kind of girl she is and all that. So as a little girl, this is how I grew up. And even though now I'm an ex-Muslim, even when I go out now, I still have in back of my mind, there is somebody cursing at me because I'm not covering my hair. This is how powerful this religious, brainwashing is. This is how much traumatic it is. And, when my daughter was young, and I was still Muslim at that time, so I was telling her all these stories of prophets, how, Prophet Abraham, then he brought his message to his, like, people. They didn't take the message, then God destroyed this land. Then Prophet Lut, and so I was trying to Moses and Jesus and all that. So God would end up destroying every, all the. So my daughter said, why God is so angry all the time? And that, like, really hit me, because like, little children, they tell truth, they tell it as they see it. But we don't think, because we are so deep down indoctrinated, knee deep into this, we don't think like that. But she said, why God is so angry all the time? And I was like, yeah, she's right. Why he's, just destroying all these people and all these cities? And then one night she woke up in middle of the night and she started crying. She was like 5 or 6 years old. And I said, what happened? She said, I don't want to go to hell. Imagine a 6-year-old girl telling you, I don't want to go in hell. And I was like, you won't go into hell. God loves children and all that, and this and that. But when I was reading Quran, I did not find a single verse where God says, I love children. Not a single verse. This is what we are told all our life, that God loves children. There is not a single verse in Quran that says God loves children. So as I said, God, the God that I found in Quran was so underwhelming, and it almost felt like he's jealous, he's insecure, he's bipolar. He one time he's like throwing people in hell, then other time he's extremely happy and then throwing them in heaven. And just like, the very, very negative, devilish kind of image of God. And Satan looks like a nice guy in front of him. What Satan does, He just tells people, backbite and do, steal. But God does the bigger things. He sends floods, he sends famine, he sends, all these hurricanes. He's the one who's destroying the world. So, and I have done this video where I dug upon where all these concepts came from. So these are all animistic concepts. They came from dualistic religions. So we are not, none of us investigated, but what now when you start investigating where all this stuff is coming from, it's all coming from even the religions that were present even before Islam.
Yeah, exactly. And I think obviously, I mean, whichever way you look at it, Islam has been influenced by a hell of a lot that predated it. And you just see like the mishmash. And you can, obviously, there's the common thread, as Madiha was saying, where, literally girls as young as her daughter at that time would be worried about going to hellfire, and things like your hair or the way you're dressing or showing too much skin is directly linked to that at that age. It's just it's crazy to think. But we've got some really, really good comments in the chat I'd just like to touch on, and I think it would lend to the conversation as well. And we'll try and keep this discussion to about an hour and a half, so people can, stay concentrated, and otherwise it gets a bit long. But Madiha, sorry, could you just mute again? Thank you. Yeah, Tanki, exactly. Somehow when religion's involved, the amount of emotional abuse and threats of hell and genuine, like what you would consider child abuse that can take place under the guise of religion is whack. But yeah, thank you for your comment there. Jord is saying, if you repeat something too many times, or if you repeat something enough, your brain stops firing new questions about it and it gets molded to the idea instead. I think that's what happens when, as Madiha was saying, like if you question something, a lot of the times, if you are seeing that evidence is contrary to what you'd hold and believe and know to be true, i.e. cognitive dissonance at play, you will kind of retreat into, as you said, just thinking that idea is basically now untouchable. And again, the thing that set me off was when I asked my grandma, why did Muhammad marry Aisha so young? And the response I got was not a rational response of like, even like, let's sit down and look into it, or let's discuss the reasons, or even it happened back then. It was a straight up, how dare you question him? You will never be happy in your life if you don't love him. And for me, that was just like, after going through, like what I've been through in life, you understand when a response is just very like, shut, like lock your mouth and throw away the key kind of thing. There was no scope to even have an open discussion. That's when kind of something should go off in your head that something is wrong here, if there's unquestionable subservience or to somebody. And then again, Islam in its very nature means to submit. So that's essentially what you're doing. You're submitting to Allah, also known as Muhammad, or whatever, you can say the Abbasids came up with it later, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, you're submitting to the will of Allah and Muhammad, who was, supposedly had this special relationship with Allah, but was essentially himself looking out for himself. But yeah, a couple of other comments, Madiha, I wanted to get your thoughts on as well. There's a very, very good question. Oh, first of all, Siraj, thank you so much for being here and all your support. I know you're always supporting. And you said, Nurya, earlier tonight I met a girl in my local pub. She watches your videos and she has left Islam because of you. If that is the case, then honestly, I'm truly honored. And I hope she enjoys her time now chilling out at the pub, because that is something she could not do previously as a Muslim. But honestly, if that's the case, I'm absolutely honored. And this is why Dr. Madiha and I do what we do, and Haram Doodles and Sahara and everyone that speaks out basically is for moments like this. So thank you. Madiha, I'm going to let you answer this question. I think you'd have a very good whack at it. And then I guess if there's anything to add, I will add to it. But Ashley is asking a very pertinent question. Ashley's saying, how can I teach these things to my children? I co-parent with a Muslim man and I really want to teach them critical thinking so they don't follow what their father teaches. Obviously, you can understand co-parenting is hard enough when you're on the same page, like religiously speaking or in terms of worldview. Madiha, imagine having a Muslim co-parent, like an ex-partner now that you're raising children with. They go and spend time with him and they've got Islam being like, you know, full throttle on them, and they're being taught that misogynistic kind of sexually repressive entire mindset and worldview. And then you've probably got Ashley there trying to raise her kids in the exact way that you've raised your children and you've taught them. So yeah, please, Madiha, if you could answer this.
So I'm not sure if her ex knows that she's an atheist, or they had this conversation as parents. But she should have this conversation with her ex first, that you can tell what you want to tell, and I'm gonna tell what I want to tell, so they don't have a clash, and they don't go back and forth, fighting with each other. So have this come on the same page, that he can tell the religion, but she's gonna tell them about rationality. And have these discussions with your children. Tell them about other religions. Tell them different belief systems. Tell them how every part of the world people decided to make their own religion, and majority people follow the same religion they're born in. Some of these religions have stuff that's outdated. Don't particularly bash Islam, but try to reason with your children, like, in current times we believe in equality. Back then people believed in this stuff, but none of this stuff is applicable anymore. That's why people don't follow it. Something like that. Make them rational, make them question. Yeah, Bible says the world was created 6,000 years ago, but the facts are this. So your children, bring them scientific books instead. Ask them questions. Well, there are a lot of things that we still don't have evidence of God. Tell them about, so we believe in science. Everything what science confirms, then we believe. So instead of bashing the religion, telling the negative points, just give them more broader perspective. So make them see the full picture instead of just focusing on the, if you bash the religion, your ex is gonna tell the children that she's gonna go to hell and all that. So just tell them there's no evidence of heaven, there's no evidence of hell, there is no evidence of magic, there is no evidence of Satan or anything. So just make them rational instead of bashing one particular religion. So that's how you can make them more scientific oriented. If they are in United States or if they are in UK, they will meet other children, and majority children are not as staunch believers as their parents were. If you see, look at the, all the studies that showing the number of church goers are declining in every part of the world, more so in Iran, but also in America and USA. Now it has declined in the past 10 years a lot. So it's going down. So eventually the world is going to become more rational, except for Pakistan. Pakistan is going in the opposite direction. Yeah, so somebody, let me talk about nepotism that's in religion. So that thing always bothered me. I was like, why all prophets' friends became, the leaders of Islam after that, and why they were the sardars of heaven. This person is in charge of this gate of the heaven. This friend is in charge, and then Muhammad's daughter Fatima was in charge of all women of heaven. So I was like, why all these people who were born at that time? Why I am not the in charge? So these things always bothered me as a girl. A lot of these things, I'm sure a lot of people question, but they don't have courage to raise these questions, and they think maybe their iman is deficient. They're lacking in their iman. That's why they're thinking this way, or Satan is making them think this way. And that's what most people, that's how they satisfy their answers. But I'm sure a lot of people question the religion, inequality, hate speech. There is so much hate speech in Quran that I couldn't go beyond those hate speeches. I was like, why God is hating on the humans that he created himself? why he's stooping to that level, why he can't be loving and kind to each and every human being, why he must hate certain group of people, why he can't get over himself. Like, if people don't believe in him, they have not seen him, so what's the big deal? Why God is taking himself so seriously? So these lot of whys, because I'm a very peaceful person. I, don't like to fight, and I was like, it seems like my morality is better than the morality of God that is in Quran. So why I am thinking this way, but God can't think. He's gonna literally burn people in hell. Their skin will come off, then he will make the skin regrow again, then he will burn them again. So very toxic God, very it's not a kind God. The picture, I was underwhelmed and surprised and shocked.
Yeah, underwhelmed is an understatement, honestly. And yeah, I completely agree. The concept. Okay, let's get into the juicy stuff with feminism, because Madiha, I know you're on the same page with me about this. It's infuriating, right? What Islam says. I mean, first of all, you're right. Quran is filled with hate speech to the point where it's cussing out Abu Lahab. Like you said, you don't even wish that badly on an ex that's like done you dirty, you're like, all right, you do you, just leave me the hell alone, kind of thing. But yeah, Allah is obsessed with doing that. And then again, what's happening to women from the get-go, like Madiha saying, the fact that as a woman you're even thinking about, right, okay, so what's my position, or what do I get at the end of this weird game that is Islam if I pass the test, which is a ridiculous test to pass in the first place, completely unfair and justified as well. Anyway, so as a woman, you think, okay, they tell you, you're going to be reunited with your husband, the one that you marry on earth. What if you don't get married? Anyway, so being reunited, you will be one of the, so in the Quran or the Hadith, whatever, it says that, I think it's the Hadith, yeah, that the three of those, like at least 3 or 4 of those 72 virgins will be your wives that you had on earth. And as wives, you won't feel jealousy, and you'll just be there as like the main woman pimp for all of the other virgins, essentially, that your husband is enjoying deflowering over and over again, because it's just a constant state of them having an erection that lasts on planet Earth what would be here is 30 years, and women consistently, the virgins consistently, that's it, they become virgins over and over again. So there's this weird obsession with deflowering young virgin women, right, which is shown in the very Prophet's example himself, with his obsession with like marrying young matrons and encouraging other people around him at the time to do the same, and very, very dark reasons for why you should do that, so you can fondle them and so that you may play with them, I think is the wording in the Hadith. And again, we see Islamic apologists now trying to wean these down and kind of dampen the effect and the kind of negative connotations and dirty and rapist, pedophilic connotations that they might have. So yeah, again, when it comes to feminism, I think, like Madiha said, hearing that, like, as an adult, when I read the Quran in English, incredibly underwhelmed. Like, everything that I had built up in my head, and maybe some part of me was like, I'm not ready to hear God's full message in my language, because you're forced to read it in Arabic so many bloody times that you're like, by the time you get to trying to read in your own language, you're put off. But when you do, exactly what Madiha is saying, it's underwhelming. First of all, even when it's addressing women, it's saying, oh, men, tell your women, or whatever. It's never to women themselves. And the only thing Muslims claim to is that there's an entire surah named after women, Surah Nisa. Well, there's entire surahs named for cows and bees and all of that. So what, are they given as much respect as well? No, it's entirely a man-made manual for men. And that very much is apparent. So when it comes to even having like the tiniest feminist bone or inclination, when you come across a text like the Quran in your own mother tongue or your own language, if you can get past, I think what somebody brought up earlier is, actually acknowledging what you're reading and not kind of forcing yourself to go more into religiosity. And I think like Dr. Madiha said really well is, you either kind of have to, I guess, protect yourself from those thoughts. And that's when, like Madiha was saying, you start questioning your own so iman is like your faith and how much faith you have as a Muslim. You start questioning whether you have enough of that, because the questions that are appearing in your mind, you think you're lacking in believing unquestionably in Allah because you're having these questions. And Islam does reinforce that, because Islam tells you that's the shaitan doing, like, whispering into your mind and creating those seeds of doubt. So he's trying to push you off the right path. What's it called? Sirat al-Mustaqim, yeah, the right path that Islam says. So then you doubt yourself, and then you start praying even more, and you start trying to connect with your religion even more. And then Islam further stunts your questioning by saying questioning is a sign of the devil and disbelief, and those who are the best Muslims should not question. And clearly Muhammad has said in the hadith, those who question too much will leave the faith. And that's the one thing I agree with him on 100%. And that's exactly why Islam tries to stunt questioning. And that's where critical thinking and Islam are completely antithetical to each other. So Ashley, I completely empathize with your lived experience of trying to co-parent with a situation where your children are being taught that on one end, and then coming home and you're trying to teach them, or I hope you're trying to teach them at least how to think, because having that critical thinking and that kind of cognitive ability, that skill set, is going to fundamentally go against everything they're being taught. So I second what Dr. Madiha was saying, and I hope that by doing that, critical thinking will trump over the Islamic anything that's being fed to them, and they will eventually, if you leave them to their own devices and you've armed them with the right set of tools to think, they will come to the same conclusions, hopefully, as Dr. Madiha and I have come to about Islam. But yeah, Dr. Madiha, I also just wanted to get your thoughts on Pakistan as a country, because I know most of your activism is done in Urdu as well. And I know you have a lot of passion about trying to make some change back in Pakistan and kind of uplifting and making women more aware of their rights there, but also taking the braver approach and going as far as to say that, hey, Islam is a problem in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So to that effect, I've seen that you also said earlier in the stream, and I know this is true because I know you personally, that initially you weren't very comfortable with going as far as to talk about Islam, and you kind of wanted to keep it to socio-political issues. So I wanted to ask you what changed and what made you think, okay, I'm going to start adding Islam into the mix. And second of all, there was a question here for you from Young Atheist, who I think you know, saying, as we see, ex-Muslims are growing in Pakistan, but in Pakistan you can't stand against dogma or Islam. So how do you think we can change the society? So yeah, if you could just combine those two answers for us, Madiha, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so how I started talking about Islam is when, what happened in Iran with Mahsa Amini, how she was, killed for not wearing hijab. And that's when I really made I was so angry. I made my video with a lot of, anger, a lot of emotions. And I really loved how people of Iran stood up for the women, and I really like that. And we don't see that in Pakistan. Pakistan feminism movement has been going on for the past 5 years, and you see every year there are a lot of hate. Even women don't support women, and that was very refreshing to see how people in Iran, boys and girls, they all stood up for Mahsa Amini. So that's when I made my first video. Please subscribe to my channel, Madiha Talks. I made my video how Iran, and then I brought up the verses from Quran about beating, wife beating, and all these. Sharia was in full force in Iran, and I talked about how Sharia is in full effect, and how women are not allowed to watch sports, how women are not allowed to go without hijab, how women are not allowed to go unaccompanied. And then I showed all the verses from Quran. The Quran restricts women, and when they, so for the past 5 years, there has been, actually 6 years, there has been women march going on. And whenever these marchers come to march in these, big cities, They were told by, religious apologists, oh, Islam has given you all the rights. What rights are you looking for? And that's when it becomes really frustrating when they tell you, oh, there is a surah, the surah, what is the women's surah that gives you all the women's. Which one?
Surah Nisa.
Oh yeah, Surah Nisa gives you all the rights. So then everybody went back and looked at what Surah Nisa has, because everybody reads Quran in Arabic. Nobody knows what the hell Quran actually says. So when people read the Quran, it says you can beat your wife. It says how women have lesser, property. It talks about halala. It talks about divorce and all that. So it's not really Surah Nisa. It says Surah Rijal basically. It gives men rights and it restricts women's rights. What angers me when somebody says Islam gives women right. Nobody says that Islam gives men right, because men are supposed to have all the rights. It's women who need some rights. That's where I have a problem. Why God doesn't address it like, United Nations Declaration of Human Rights? All human beings are equal. Why God didn't say that? Isn't that such a beautiful statement? I think that is the most precious and best statement that human came up with, that everybody in the world, entire world, agrees on, that yes, all human beings are equal in respect and dignity and virtue and whatever. But God doesn't say even once in Quran that women and men are equal, so it makes men their head. So when God allows men to beat their wives, God doesn't say you're supposed to beat them lightly, gently, and or just touch them. Or no, there's no instruction like that. It leaves women at the mercy of men. So you're basically endorsing domestic violence. You're basically giving a very toxic advice, a relationship advice as a God to men, to beat the wife so they can start loving you back. Nobody loves back if you start beating them. So that's very wrong and toxic advice. If you ask any relationship expert, if you want to, you're working on your relationship, no relationship expert would say, your wife would really start loving you back if you beat her up every night. No, nobody would say that. So you can tell these are not from God, these are man-made. So the other thing about feminism, like how Prophet had so many wives, so I used to question that. I'm sure everybody has these questions growing up. And the answer I used to get, and I'm sure everybody gets the same answer, oh, because there were a lot of women at that time, and they couldn't survive on their own. So in order to give them protection, he married them. So what about when he died? Didn't they need protection when he died? They were all in their early 20s and late teens, all these women, and none of them could marry because they were made Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, mother of all men, and they couldn't marry. So men's sexual needs are like God takes a lot of account, considers a lot about men's sexual needs. But what about women's sexual needs? So, and then when man marries 4 wives, so he's going to a different wife every night. What about those wives who are waiting for that guy for 3 nights? What about their sexual needs? So women's sexual needs are totally neglected or not even considered, that women would have sexual needs. And then, you go to heaven, and then God will take out jealousy from women so they can see their men having sex with these virgins. Why doesn't God just take out the sexual desire from men, instead of making women wait and watch that all this porn in front of them? So these, none of this makes sense. This is, you literally have to shut down your brain to make sense of all this religion. And you can't be a feminist and a Muslim, and a Muslim and a feminist. You can't. It doesn't go along. When somebody says I'm Muslim and I'm a feminist, I don't know how they make sense of that. So it doesn't make sense to me. And if you read Quran with translation, you either become extremist or you become ex-Muslim. So you become ex-femist or ex-Muslim. That's what I became.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Madiha, exactly. And I mean, everybody else in the comments as well is like, just the whole equality. And when it comes to gender disparity, Islam is up there in guaranteeing it and ensuring it. And just to point on this, because it's so sad whenever I hear even Muslims, and like obviously really innocent, naive Muslims who are better than Islam and don't really know what Islam truly says, they always quote, I was going to say Prophet Muhammad, they always quote Muhammad and his final sermon or final khutbah as saying, you know, like no human is superior than anyone else, and that's all for equality and human rights. Um, and again, like Arabs aren't superior to non-Arabs and non-Muslims aren't superior to Muslims. That's in direct contradiction with the Quran, first and foremost, right? If you don't understand the Quran in its classical form, even back then, if they didn't understand the Quran, it was encouraged that you read it in the Qurayshi dialect. And there are plenty of hadiths about Muhammad and his companions talking about the superiority of the Quraysh and like just their lineage and what it means to them, and also the fact that the real sermon, so the real final sermon of Muhammad's, I have a video on YouTube called Muhammad's Fake Last Sermon. The real thing, again, makes so much more sense in line with everything else that we see in Islamic literature and the way, excuse me, we have Muhammad's teachings come out. So in the final sermon, the real one, and I've referenced everything in that video, actually says, treat your women well, for they are like prisoners with you. Literally uses, it translates to that word. So you can understand even at the point where Muhammad is giving his believers the final kind of words and pearls of wisdom before his demise at the hands of a Jewish woman. Whoop, whoop, she poisoned him. He basically said, take care of treat your women well. And Muslims quote that bit only, not the bit that they are like prisoners with you. And then you look at the way they are treated, as Madiha was saying, there is no prescription for lightly or with a toothpick or with this or with that or like, no, this is all new modern day apologetics to hide the embarrassment. But in fact, you could understand women were almost equivalent to, let's say, like the shuttle that they had around. You know, you whip a camel, you hit a woman like that. Separating your beds means that you literally like leave her and chain her up somewhere. That's essentially, people who know classical Arabic will tell you what that actually meant, and the way that the connotations of the wording is as if you chain up an animal and you leave them there as a punishment. And that goes in line with the beating, and it goes in line with Umar ibn Khattab saying that a woman who's not able to bear children is equivalent to, or worse than a mat made of straw that you'd find like in these kind of olden Bedouin like tents in the desert. They would have those kind of wooden twig made mats out of. He compared a woman who's infertile, or I guess just not able to have children for whatever reason, equivalent to that, like bunches of twigs. He's saying a mat is worth more to you. So you can see what they have done to women, like, you know, over a period of time, and then gone ahead and said, this is the word of God, and this is how women should be left to, you know, be in terms of their position in society forevermore. So again, that's why you've got a problem with, as you know, I asked Madiha about Pakistan, because for me, it's almost like it's bittersweet trying to do activism for a country like Pakistan, where you're like, okay, is there hope and is there potential for change? And then, you know, when we see the ground realities, and even Madiha, we see like how far our activism is going. Sometimes you feel like you're hitting a brick wall, you know, and like, it's not even mainly viewership from Pakistan. Sometimes I think, are these just Indians who understand us? So sometimes I feel really disheartened about that, but the work has got to start somewhere. And by the way, the people that support us are so sweet. Like, they're always like, you know, just keep, even if your views aren't there right now, just keep prodding along in Urdu, just keep saying what we're saying, because it's got to be done. Also, just before I forget, Sheikh Boyardi, thank you so much for your support. And this is what I'm saying, Madiha. People like Sheikh say, don't give up, keep up the good work. I think that is something that we need to do. So, Madiha, we'll go through a few comments as well before we end. But I wanted to get your thoughts. Do you ever feel disheartened? And how do you feel like activism in Pakistan is going? And what kind of motivates you to keep going?
Yeah, I do feel disheartened. Actually, I was very disheartened even today. You know, like because I get messages on daily basis from youngsters from Pakistan just because I have a channel. So a lot of people try to, get in touch with me, and they're so frustrated. They're asking me how to get out of Pakistan because they just passed this new bill. How to, there was a blasphemy law before. Now they can catch people if they're doing blasphemy against companions of Prophet. So they're basically expanding this, news around people. So so basically anybody can label this person has committed blasphemy against Fatima or Umar, so they can just burn them alive. Instead of removing the Article 295C, they're basically expanding, So it's just basically have become a hellhole for Pakistani youngsters, especially atheists or even free thinkers who are not extremists. There are many Muslim free thinkers, no, not Muslim people who are secular minded, but they're Muslim and they are against this extremism. But they're also getting disappointed and disheartened. So people just want to leave Pakistan. That's not the solution. Like, not like 25 crore or 29 crore people can leave Pakistan. This Pakistan is becoming a headache for rest of the world. It has become a white elephant. So we have to educate them. Government doesn't seem interested. Instead, their priorities are even more, adding khatbe nabuwat law. Even before you marry somebody, you have to do this khatme nabuwat oath. You have to say Muhammad is the last prophet, otherwise your vows won't be validated. This is just crazy, and it's just becoming worse and worse. So yeah, I do feel disheartened, but since I have passion for it, so sometimes I feel like, I have a very good life, comfortable life. I'm a physician. What am I doing? But then, you have to. Somebody has to do it. So that's what I do.
Yeah, and more power to you, Madiha. And again, your passion is contagious because sometimes when I'm feeling like, okay, well, what are we doing with our whatever little free time we have? Again, like just getting a WhatsApp from you or scheduling a new thing or coming up with a new topic, it does keep me like motivated to keep going and think, you know what, even today, if 10 people are listening to us in Urdu, at least there's going to be 10 people in 10 different households who might hold a different opinion. And, Rome wasn't built in a day. And we might not live to see this in our lifetime. I do not have any hopes for Pakistan in terms of making a change that quickly. But the fact that, what they say, like the best thing you can do on earth is like plant the seedlings of a tree whose shade you'll never sit under, that famous quote. So it's kind of that thing, just setting, I guess, the wheels in motion, or putting that knowledge out there, or just saying, look, as women, we've chosen a different path. We're loud, we're bold, we're speaking about it. We don't really care. We're going to say what we went through. And because, Madiha, you must get this as well a lot of the times where you come out as an ex-Muslim woman and everyone's just like, if you search like Nurya Khan on YouTube, the first thing that will come up is like debunked or destroyed or, exposed. These are the lines that are thrown on ex-Muslim women because they just don't want to believe that our story or anything that we're talking about realistically has any link to Islam. They will think we're the Pakistani culture has failed us. Misogynistic, like sexually repressed Pakistani mentalities and the way we're brought up and the marriage thing and all of that has, made us go through what we went through. They'll never acknowledge the Islamic link. So that's always there. And I think I do really, really respect the fact that you decided to push the boundaries and say, you know what, I'm not going to just stop at socio-political issues. I'm going to go as far as to also speak about Islam. So my final question to you, before we wrap up and just read the remaining comments, would be to ask you, what would you say is your biggest, I guess, like what's the best thing that you experience since leaving religion behind and thinking the way you do now?
So I've become much happier. I don't, very lighter. I'm very happy that I know the truth there, that this all, and I see everybody as an equal. And I have become like beyond borders, beyond like a global mindset, where the hate has gone. There was a lot of hate when we were growing up, Hindus, Muslims, kafir, Jews, Christians, so that's all gone. Now I see everybody as an equal person. So less discriminatory. Just what religion makes you a hater, I have come out of it. And when people say, oh no, but Islam teaches you love, no, it doesn't. Like all your life, what you hear is Jews are this, Christians are this, and Hindus, oh, don't even talk because they don't have book. You're only supposed to have some soft corner for people of book, and Hindus are not one of them. So, it's a discrimination. I feel lighter. I don't have to waste my time in, prayers and doing all this activities, rituals that they're unyielding. They're not gonna bring up any results. I rely on myself. I know if I work hard, I'm gonna get the results. If I don't, there is nobody sitting there and accepting my prayers and doing the magic wand and make your sufferings go away. You see through people who are religious, and they're all showing off, but practically they don't do anything, and you can just crack bullshit. That it just makes you lighter and happier and less of a hater, more of like accepting everybody, sees everybody like an equal human being. So that's what being non-religion does to you, and especially the LGBTQ community, that they're so marginalized because of religious hatred. And you see, like, there are 10% people are always going to be, LGBTQ. Even animals, 10% of the animals are going to be, homosexuals. So homosexuality have always been there. It's just the religion makes us hate those people. They're just like a minority. We have to accept them, but we can't because of the religious mindset. There is this Zindagi Tamasha. If you guys had a chance to look at it, it's very interesting. It touches upon so many things, and one of them is how Pakistan every like intertwined with the religion. Like people can't think beyond the what mindset religion makes your mindset, and you can't just go cross that boundary. You draw a circle around you, and just you stay in the circle. The circle is invisible. But you don't cross that boundary. And basically, it's a mental shackle. And coming out of Islam just frees you. So that's what I have.
Thank you. And yeah, exactly. I think, Madiha, I'm guessing what you're also experiencing is just like, it's so much easier being the authentic you. Like you said, you naturally are a very empathetic person. You're a lover, not a fighter. You're not bigoted, and you're not racist, and you're not anti-Semitic, and you're not all of these things that Islam had essentially forced you to be. And even like, this is such a small detail, but it means so much coming from a Pakistani background. Yes, the way you're taught to view Indian Hindus, and the way you're taught to almost mock their beliefs and their religiosity and their religious sentiments. But if it was ever flipped the other way, Muslims can't stand it. But you're almost allowed, you're given a free carte blanche to roast their that hundreds of thousands of gods and the elephant head or the monkey or whatever. And like, you do see Muslims go above and beyond to mock polytheists because there's such a disdain for them in Islam. Obviously, that starts from Muhammad destroying the 360 idols in the Kaaba. So yeah, I'm very, very glad to hear that, Dr. Madiha. And it was not an answer that I was not expecting. I did have a follow-up question for you as well, though, because I did see a comment about it, and I think it's important we talk about this for a few moments. But thank you, Chandra, for your super chat and your support. It means the world, especially when you support ex-Muslim women who are full on like revealing their identity, like Dr. Madiha. You don't understand what happens in the background and the crap she has to deal with online. So thank you. Chandra is saying, more power to you, beautiful women with brave hearts. Keep educating and inspiring other girls. We will do our very best, Chandra. So thank you. But Madiha, my final, I promise you this is the final question, would be, do you sometimes, or I just want to know your thoughts on, do you ever feel like people who are religious and do have something like a sky daddy, Allah, to turn to when they're in moments of despair or they're feeling low? Do you feel like either that, like they have, something to reach out to and they have a sense of protection, albeit even if your prayers aren't directly answered, because we all know prayers aren't answered, but that and and the sense of community that they have, right? So you could move to a foreign city, but if you can hedge your bets that if you walk into a mosque, you're going to be surrounded by a sense of community, and therefore, or you have an automatic community available, ready, set for you wherever you go, just by virtue of who you believe in. So, do you ever think that we would struggle more because we have to deal with this like logically and realistically, and the only people we have to rely on are ourselves and other fellow human beings if we are vulnerable enough to let them in? Do you have any of those regrets or feelings ever, and how do you account for the lack of sense of community?
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't miss Allah in my life because He doesn't exist. So just like, kids when they grow 12, 10 or 12, and you tell them Santa brought the gift, and kids say no Santa, and they grow out of it. They never miss Santa. So just like that, I grew out of God and I never missed him because I know he's not real. Actually, I feel bad people who pray to him and waste all their time praying and all that, and they're wasting all the zikr when they rosary beads, what they do. This is all waste of time. It's not going to work. What really is going to work is practically what you do towards your goals. So by sitting and praying, just like COVID-19 came, and if even if the whole world was praying and circling around Kaaba, it was not going to go away. How it went away by scientists inventing the COVID-19 vaccine, and that by kafirs actually. Kafirs invented the vaccine, and that's how the world got saved. So yeah, I don't miss it. The sense of community, the people who are believers, I also find them very judgmental towards who are like us ex-Muslims and free thinkers. They think we are crazy. That's what I don't like, because when I meet a Muslim, I don't hold grudge against that their right to believe. Like there are a lot of Muslims, and I'm okay with them praying and all that, but they are not okay with me not praying. They are the ones who are judging me. So that's what so they're bigoted. I am not bigoted. I know people have this mindset and they can't change it, and I know and I accept it. I never attack someone. I never attack a believer. I criticize Islam as an ideology, because any ideology is up for debate, because it impacts humans, their life. So it impacts your life. It has an impact on my life. So we all have the right to criticize any ideology, capitalist or socialism or anything. Islam is Religions are just ideologies. So, but I don't criticize someone's right to pray in front of me. By all means, they can do that. If you go to mandir or you go to temple, by all means go there. But what I find is, like, Muslims, they criticize, and they even kill you. The religion, they kill you. So they are the ones who are who have the problem, not the ex-Muslims. So I do not miss people who are not rational. I would rather have one friend who thinks like me, who's rational, and my mental wavelength is, we are at the same wavelength. And talking to somebody with the believer mindset, and they don't get my point, they don't even know what I'm talking about, and they're not even interested. You have to remember.
Oh, Madiha, sorry, I think you froze for a moment. You were, yeah.
Sorry, it's my internet connection. I have to reboot it, I think. So that's what people they don't want to talk about it, and that's what the problem is. Because when my friend told me first time that she's an atheist, I did not shut her off. I was curious what was her stance, why she changed her mind. I tried to debate with her. I tried to change her mind, bring her back to Islam, the light. straight path, but I kept on having debate with her. But a lot of people have this irrational attitude; they don't want to talk about it. That's where the problem. So I don't miss these people. I'm fine. I'm alone with company of people like that.
Yeah, thank you, Madiha. Sorry, people were like listening from the edge of their seats. So when you cut off, I was like, okay, thank God you're back. Not thank God, wrong word to use there. Apologies. Thank technology, you're back. And yeah, Atrex was also saying, as an ex-Muslim, I think the sense of community isn't quite real. I was constantly paranoid about revealing who I really was to other Muslims, and it made me feel profoundly alone. Yeah, I agree, but that's because I think at that point you've mentally left religion. So you're almost like the black sheep of a community that you're trying to blend into. But I mean, when you're a Muslim and you really believe it, the sense of like, obviously if you do something in large groups and there's social like apparatus behind it, and you do it constantly, it does really enhance this kind of like social cohesion. And Islam guarantees that, right? By calling you to go Friday prayers and to do that outside of your houses as men. And then you form the ummah, and all of this stuff is like very much included in the manual of Islam, that you are a sense of community. That's why we say like, oh, people try and conflate Islam with racism, but you can't, because Islam is this thing where it goes beyond race to say you and I are more similar than we're not, regardless of what we look like, what we eat, where we're from, because we pray up and down 5 times in the same way to the same God, right? Not knowing all the pagan and Mesopotamian and Babylonian origins of that God, and also the moon and the pagan elements. But yeah, anyway, so I do see sometimes ex-Muslims grappling with a sense of loss when it comes to community. And I guess it's hard for free thinkers or humanists or secularists or atheists to offer that, because we are, as they say, we're not a monolith. We're all very different. Like as Madiha says, the only thing we have in common is that we don't believe in Allah, and Islam being the final message of God. So I guess people can struggle with that, and it is a real thing. Again, that's when religious trauma comes in as well, and existential crises after leaving religion. But there's definitely ways to gauge that sense of community back. Like Madiha was saying, sometimes you brave it out and you're a lone wolf and you're just so happy to be mentally emancipated. Sometimes, I mean, I think I'm so grateful for the people I've met since I've started my activism and this channel. I feel like I've got a whole new family. Even if it's virtual, you genuinely have people you can say whatever comes to the tip of your tongue without holding back. And that was never something I could even do in my own Muslim household. So small baby steps, I think. And yeah, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. But I wanted to thank you, Madiha, so much for your time. And Tim, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate the support. But yeah, Madiha, this was great. And I know it was a big ask to ask you to give me all your thoughts about everything to do with Islam and your journey in one sitting. So I really appreciate how much insight you have given us. And I would love to have you back on at some point, just for like, honing into one topic specifically. So yeah, we definitely can do that for the English audience. But yeah, any final thoughts from your end, and then we'll go through some comments and wrap it up.
No, I would like to say thank you again for giving me space on your channel and exposure. The more people connect with us, maybe somebody is in that phase where I was a few years ago, where I was struggling. What is the truth? Whether to come out of religion or not. Hopefully, our conversation today helps somebody made up their mind to come out of the dogma and come. It's literally a cult, to come out of it and free themselves from these shackles. Literally, all you have to do is learn history and a little bit of common sense, and it's literally all about common sense. Me and Nurya are gonna make a series of videos, and we'll take you to this journey how all these religions impacted women and human life. And please stay tuned and subscribe to our channels and like and share our videos and spread our message. And love to everybody and to you, Nurya. You're doing an amazing work.
Thank you so much. And it's only because I have people like you in my corner, obviously, and people like you to make these things happen with. Otherwise, like I said, it's a very, very lonely game. But thank you, Madiha, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to at least share your story and your insights and your activism with my English audience. I've been meaning to introduce you to the audience of Holy Humanists for a long time now. So yeah, I hope today you all kind of got some more insights into Dr. Madiha, the kind of things she's experienced, the kind of unraveling of her mentality from a Muslim believing woman to the free thinking feminist activist you see before you today. And I hope it was informative for people to realize how she even approaches these new facets of life as a mother. And how you pass on these learnings without coming across as, you know, being too enforcing or domineering, because then we would just end up being like religious people or parents themselves. So yeah, I think somebody had a question about how long has Madiha been ex-Muslim. She, if I'm not mistaken, has been ex-Muslim since 2018. And yeah, do check out her channel, Madiha Talks. I've also shared it in the chat. I will show you guys again here on YouTube. If you speak Urdu, Hindi, please, if you know anybody that does, subscribe to Madiha. She also does like weekly or bi-weekly, I think, live streams now as well. She's more than happy to answer your questions literally about any topic under the sun, as long as you remain respectful. That's kind of like the only requirement, and I think that's a very basic ask. So thank you to everybody who was in the chat and keeping it lit. Haram Doodles, thank you for being here. And all of these jokes, I just starred all of these funny comments that I was reading as I went along. But yeah, thank you 85 as well for staying up and listening to us. Oh, and yeah, me and Dr. Madiha have talked a lot about financial independence and how women can help kind of get themselves in a more secure position so that they can leave if they are questioning religion and, you know, everything is working against them. Completely agree with you there. And Lucas Liberty, I hope you're doing well. And Lucas is the shining example, by the way, Madiha, of a Pakistani ex-Muslim who moved away from their family and started a new life. And so kudos to you, Lucas. You're right. Don't forget about us guys and how hard it is for some of us too. That is true. And just because Dr. Madiha and I speak more about things from a woman's perspective, that in no way says that it's easy for men to leave religion or that they have it, you know, much easier. That's not the case. Every individual situation is different. So Lucas, we hear you. And thank you for your support. And yeah, your everything you've gone through with Islam and getting out of it is just as valid. So yeah, please don't think that it dampens any one of your stories out there. But yes, thank you so much to everyone again. Madiha, we'll see you back here very soon, I hope. And let's continue to pave the way in Urdu. But yeah, Madiha, thank you so much. Bye everybody who tuned in. And Madiha, once again, goodbye and thank you to you.